Hello again, and this is a mobility focused session. So I am still providing other workouts. Hopefully you've been enjoying following along with those, but we do need to have some recovery days in between. So what I don't want to have happen is people trying to do the high intensity workouts every single session, because you'll end up just blowing yourself out, getting really sore, and actually your fitness level will begin to drop along with your immune system. So we don't want that, especially at a time like this. So we want to make sure we split those days up with good recovery sessions. You can still do some activity on those sessions, meaning light aerobic work. If you wanted to go for a jog, keeping it talking pace, just nice easy recovery run, something that's 20 to 30 minutes, that's fine. But we want to also have some mobility sessions so that we're keeping our soft tissue in as good a shape as possible, and allowing it to recover as well as possible. And also, hopefully, we're gaining some function in terms of how we're able to move and just move freely and pain-free on a day-to-day basis. So we're going to start off, and we're going to go through a number of phases here. I like to start off with soft tissue work, just to help get rid of some of the trigger points and also increase some of the blood flow to the muscles so they're a little bit more pliable just to start with. And then after we go through soft tissue work, then we'll go into a couple of stretches for both lower and upper body. And then we'll do some movement work, some movement retraining. And we're going to focus on the squat movement pattern today. And then as we go through other mobility sessions, I'll incorporate other movement patterns as well. So let's go ahead and let's start off with soft tissue work. I have a foam roll. I know a lot of people do have a foam roll, so hopefully you have one of these. If you don't, that's fine because I have other options. Option number 2 would be a ball. I have a lacrosse ball. You want something dense enough to actually kind of sink in. Tennis ball for some people, if they're really tight, is okay. For others who have done some stretching and some soft tissue work, not really the amount of pressure that they would need to dig in, so you'd want to go with something a little bit more solid. The lacrosse ball tends to work well, but if that's all you have at home, to try and get some of the bigger muscles, especially in the lower body where you're already really close to the ground, it gets a little bit tough with something this small, so you may want to upgrade and go to a softball. That can be really aggressive for some people who are beginners, but I'll show you how to take some of that pressure off if that's literally all you have. Option number 3 would be a dowel. So with a just broom handle, that works. It's going to be a little bit difficult to reach some of the muscles, so you may have to have someone at home help you out with it, especially for something like the hamstrings. But it is something that you can utilize. But the first 2 are going to be what you really want to go to for most muscle groups. You can use it pretty well. So starting off, we're going to go with the calves. I like working up the body, and so I'm just going to go ahead and start with my foam roller, and I'll start at the very bottom, and I'm going to work my way up in a 2 inches up, 1 inch down fashion. That way I can cover the whole muscle, but I do it slowly and methodically, and I'm also going to pay attention to any spots that might be sore or tender. And if you feel those spots, you want to kind of focus more attention on those spots versus just the whole muscle if other parts are good. So I start right on the Achilles. I'm going to go up 2, down 1, and notice I'm turning my foot to the outside. That's because the calf is actually split into 2 sections. So I want to be sure I get both. So we're going to spend maybe a minute on each muscle group, but if you do find other parts of the body, or even this one, that's really bad and it's really tender, especially like I have it where I'm just using the weight of the limb itself, then you're going to want to focus more time on it than 1 minute. You can speed it up a little bit if you're going every single day, because then you're going to get enough time over maybe a couple weeks or even a month where your muscles are going to start adapting to that. and start getting rid of some of the tender points on their own. But if it's only a couple times a week, you want to spend a little bit more time doing it. So I did both sides there. If it wasn't that bad, I can put more force on it. So I'll cross the legs, and now that extra weight, I'll be able to maybe find a few more tender points if it wasn't that bad with just the weight of the limb itself. The other thing you want to focus on here is I'm trying to relax everything. I'm trying to let the foam roll sink in as if it's trying to go to the bone. What we don't want to do is maybe load it up and then even get my weight on it and really try and just crank away at it. Because what's going to happen is if you hit a tender spot, you're going to tense up like crazy because it's not going to feel too good. So you don't want that to happen because it's counterintuitive. We're trying to get the muscle to relax. And we're trying to get our body in more of a relaxed parasympathetic state anyways. So feeling a lot of discomfort and tensing up, that's going to send the wrong signal to the body, and we're not going to get a whole lot out of that session. So I'm just trying to relax that muscle, let it sink in really well. And then I'll move up the body. Now, for those of you who didn't have foam roll, again, ball. That works fine, okay? On the hamstring, I'll show you a different way to do it because it's going to sink in pretty deep and you're not going to get a whole lot out of it, but for the calf, it's fine. If you're stuck with a dowel, go ahead, take a seat on something. Regular chair is going to be fine. I have a plyo box just so I have different heights to show you this stuff today. And you're going to take that dowel and you're going to start the same way. And you're just going to start at the Achilles and work your way up and just kind of let it roll. And the main focus there is just trying to let that calf muscle relax. The dowel's a little bit harder because you're going to have to kind of maneuver into some different positions. So you're going to have to really focus on relaxing the muscle group that you're trying to roll out. Back to the foam roll for the hamstrings. Same leg. So I'm going to start just above the knee. I don't necessarily want to be on the little bitty tendons that cross the backside of the knee. Again, I'm turning my leg out because the hamstrings cover a broad area there. And I want to be sure I get all of it. So up 2 inches, down 1, and I'll go all the way up to the hip bone itself. Now notice, as I'm doing this, if I have to lift myself, and there's going to be a number of positions where we do, I'm keeping the shoulders down out of the ears. Okay, I don't want everything riding up in here and messing up the shoulder joint. I'm also keeping the hands as much as I can right under the shoulders, so I'm well supported. Okay, I don't want to be stretched way out here and putting a ton of pressure on the front side of my shoulder. Those tissues, they're not real thick when you look at the shoulder capsule. And the musculature around the joint, it's not real big either. So when you're looking at the rotator cuff musculature, those are tiny little muscles, and we don't want to put a lot of pressure on them, light them up, or put pressure on the capsule itself and get it to where it stretches out. So we're just supporting right here, hands under the shoulders, and as you go a little bit further, you can do like I just did, sit down, move the foam roller up, or you can just walk the hands and keep yourself centered that way. It's not going both sides, just let me turn my foot out, turn it in. Now we're going to go to the piriformis next. In terms of what you're going to do with the ball, for the hamstrings, like I said, with softball, it's okay. You can probably go on the floor, that's fine. Lacrosse ball is just going to sink in, you're not going to get much out of it. So what I like to do is get on something that's tall enough to where my feet aren't touching the ground. Now I can completely relax that leg. And I'll start off above the tendon because it's more pressure. So I want to be right on that tendon. And you'll just put however much weight on that ball that you can without it tensing up. Okay, I'm just letting it sink in. And with this, you don't have a whole lot of room to move, so you're probably just going to have to manually work that ball up. All right, so I'll just roll, do small rolls back and forth in one area, and then I'll move it up all the way to the hip. This was the inside part of the hamstring. Now I'm going to go to the outside, and I'll do the same thing. And one thing you can do here that's kind of nice, that you don't really have the ability to do with the foam roll, is if you hit a spot that's not feeling too good, it's pretty knotted up, or it's pretty tender, then you can pin it and just sit right on that spot, and then you go extension and flexion. And you just work that about 5 times is all you need. It's not going to completely loosen up. It'll definitely be better than when you started. Okay, so the tack and floss method. If just small rolls is enough for now, and you're finding a lot of nasty spots, you just need to roll on it for now, do that. All right, tack and floss a little bit more aggressive. With the dowel, that will be something you probably need a partner for. You can get it here. You can come underneath and try to roll it that way. But again, you're really trying to do some things with the other leg to keep that balance. So you may have to pull it in just to keep yourself balanced so you can relax it enough. And even then, it's hard to get the amount of pressure you really want. So it's easier if you just lay face down and you have a partner roll the hamstring for you. And as I say that, make sure your partner is trustworthy enough to go by your direction, so that if you say, whoa, that's too hard, back off, you may not want the practical joker who's just going to smash in harder. Okay, you want somebody that's actually going to listen and back off a little bit and give you the right amount of pressure as they're rolling there. So, for the piriformis, now we're talking not just the piriformis, it's the one that gets the blame, but there's a group of about 6 muscles that are external rotators in the hip, and they're right in the backside here underneath the glute. So to reach that with the foam roll, we want to just sit middle of the glute right on the foam roll. I'm going to take that same leg, I'm going to cross it over the opposite leg. That puts a mild stretch into all those different muscles there. Glute med, glute max, and then also some of those external rotators I was talking about. So, right here, dead center, that's more where the piriformis is. And I'll follow it, I'll kind of roll this way and go toward the head of the femur, or the top of that upper leg bone. And it gets kind of knotted up there as it goes towards its insertion point. You can also shift higher into the hip, not necessarily on the bone, but just directly below that ridge. And again, I'm just going to work under that ridge. And there's your connection point for glute med. Okay? And that gets kind of nasty on a lot of people as well. And it'll be almost like a pinching sensation if it's kind of tight. So you want to hit both those areas. And just small rolls, and again, work toward the side. Same thing with the ball. All right, exact same thing. The only thing there is if you're using something like a softball, again, it's going to be pretty aggressive. So if you're tender there, you're going to want to really push through the hands and through that foot that's on the ground to keep some of that pressure off. You're not going to have to do that as much on a foam roll. It's a little bit more forgiving. In terms of the stick, not a whole lot you can do there. I mean, you can have someone try and roll it out, but best bet is to just try and find a ball, something to sit on. So, that's that side. Let's go to the other side. I'll just put us on a timer, and I'll tell you when to switch. So now we're going to the other side. Exact same thing, starting off with the calf, and we'll just take a minute. 2 inches up, 1 inch down. to shift to the hamstring, same thing. Go for another minute. Okay, now we're going to the piriformis. So we'll sit, cross that leg over, small roll starting in the middle. Okay, so now we got both sides on the back side. Now we'll switch over, we'll go to the front and into the upper body. So on the front we have our quad, which covers a big area here. So I'm going to break that up into the anterior quad, so the front side, and then also the lateral. So that is still part of the quad. People always call it the IT band. Yes, the IT band does cross there. But that tissue's so stiff, you're never going to actually like break it up or anything like that. People might say that. You're actually going after the lateral aspect of that quad muscle. So start off down the front, we'll shift to the side, and then we'll go up into the upper body. So on the front, we want to start just above the knee, and I'll turn my foot out. I'll get more of the inside part of the quad, and then I'll shift to straight down the center. So I'm going to start off right above the knee. I'm going to go 2 inches up, 1 inch down. On the foam roll, I can do the tack and floss. So let's say I hit a more tender point right here. Then I'll just stop and I'll go flexion, extension. And I'll do that for, again, about 5 reps, and then I'll continue on. And I'll try and hit new spots there. So there, that was the inside. Now I'll start just above the knee in the middle. Now I'm going up the middle. Up 2 inches, down 1. Again, I'm trying to relax. Let the foam roll really sink in. And that's the front side. Now we're going to go to the lateral, or the outside. With this, most people are very tender here, especially if you haven't been foam rolling too much. So what we want to do is cross the other leg over and make sure we're pushing through that heel and through our elbow, just like on a side bridge, as much as we need to take some of that pressure off. Because we don't want to really tense up. We're trying to actually relax, let that foam roll sink in. So we'll start off above the knee. Notice how I crossed over. And now I'm going up 2, down 1. And I'm just using whatever pressure I need through my heel, through my elbow, to be able to relax that leg and let that foam roll sink in. And once I get to the top, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn just a little bit forward, okay? And right in that front hip pocket, there's just a little piece of muscle there. And that's actually where the IT band originates. And that muscle, it can get knotted up on people. And again, just like the glute med, you hit it and it's bound up on you, or it's got some trigger points in it, it'll feel like a little pinch. So, that's the quad. Into the upper body. Really with the foam roll or with the ball, the only thing we can hit well would be through the lats. Foam rolling abdomen, not necessarily a huge fan of that for 2 reasons. One, people tend to have poor posture, and a lot of people have an anterior pelvic tilt just because they're tight in their hip flexors. So that musculature is already on a stretch. So we don't need to loosen it up more. If anything, we need to tone our midsection, strengthen our hamstrings to get that pelvis in a better position. So I don't want to do anything to help maintain that poor posture. The other thing is, you have a whole lot of organs that are right behind it, so just trying to relax into something, a ball or a foam roll, you can actually do some damage there. So leaving that alone, and we're just going to go after the lat. So what we'll do there, I'll actually, on that one, start from the top. And if I go overhead, I like to go thumb back, just so we're not impinging anything in that shoulder for people who aren't really too mobile. And so I'm going to move down. I'm just going to put my weight right here on my side. And we're moving down. 2 inches down, 1 inch up. And as I get about midway down my torso, that's when I'm going to turn. Because that lat actually goes behind and then attaches to the hip. So I'm going to turn right here, but I'm not going to let the foam roll push me into this huge arch. I don't want it pushing in on the spine. I want to push my spine into it. So I'm actually getting the muscle itself and controlling my spine. And then I'll just go, I'll follow it right to the top of the hip, and I'm not necessarily on the bone. So that's what we do for the lat. So now we'll go ahead and we'll do the other side. So we'll start off with the quad, inside, straight down the middle, hit the outside, up into our TFL, that little muscle here, and then we'll do the lat. So again, we'll do about a minute on each. So starting off, quad, right above the knee. Now we'll switch to the outside. Good, and now we'll finish upper body with the lat on that same side. Up top, 2 inches down, 1 up. Good. So for soft tissue work, we've covered pretty much the whole body there. If you're using the dowel with the quad, again, you want to kind of sit on something to where you can relax in the quad and just roll it. Okay. In terms of the upper body, looking at the lats, that's a little bit tough. Again, you can have someone kind of roll it for you, just relax, but you got to be really careful around that scapula. So for that, I would say rely on the stretches we'll show. Don't try and roll it out too much unless you have that ball or foam roller. Okay, so we just got done with our soft tissue work from a self-myofascial release standpoint. Now we're going to move on to the stretching. I'm going to try and get into it really quick. But basically, the one thing you want to know with our stretching is we're going to use a PNF technique. It tends to be more efficient, and all that means is we're going to do a regular stretch, and then we're going to do a very soft contraction in the opposite direction of the stretch. So when we contract in that opposite direction, think of maybe 20% pull. You don't want to crank into it, you don't want to pull a muscle trying to go as hard as you can, but 20% pull is still going to get the same effect in terms of relaxing the muscle and being able to get a deeper stretch as we go back into the stretch after that 6-second hold. So that's all we're going to do for some of the PNF stretching. The only equipment we need right now would be a wall for the first one, and then a strap for a few of the others. Jump rope works. If you have some of those really long bands, those will work as well. I have a strap from a ratchet strap that you use for anchoring things on a car. So basically anything that's long enough to where you can have it around your foot, and be able to pull on it with your hands, and at the same time strong enough to where it's going to hold, it's not going to break on you. So let's get right into it. We're going to hit the hip flexors first. So this is a rear foot elevated hip flexor stretch. So start off, knee against the wall ideally. We pull the other foot flat. If it won't go flat, simply pull the knee out a little bit away from the wall until you can get the other foot flat. Once you're in that position, if it's a mild discomfort, good, you're good to go. Just hang out there. If it's not that bad, you can go ahead, squeeze the glute on the backside, push that hip forward until you get that mild discomfort, and then you just hold there. You can also shift toward the outside or toward the inside, see if there's a spot within that range that's a little bit more tense, and you would want to hang out at the spot where you find the most resistance. So we're just going to hold here for another couple of seconds, and then we're going to go into the PNF portion. So I'm pushing this way into my stretch. I'm trying to elongate all of that musculature. So my PNF portion, I'm going to take my knee, I'm actually going to drive it forward into the floor a little bit, but also forward. And we're going to do that right now for 6 seconds. Again, like I said, just a 20% pull. And go. I'm pulling forward. And relax. See if you can shift into it a little bit deeper. And we're going to hold for 20 seconds. We're going to go one more time. Pull forward. Relax.
See if you can shift a little bit further forward and hold. Okay, go ahead, switch legs. Same idea. And we start off holding for 20. Okay, pull forward. Relax, see if you can come forward a little bit more. And pull forward again. Relax. See if you can shift forward a little bit more and hold. And ease off the wall. Okay, now we're going into our hamstring stretch with our strap. So with this, take your strap, loop it right where the arch support is, and we hold on to it. Then we lay back. 3 points of contact, tailbone, back of the shoulder, back of the head. Keep the bottom leg straight, pointed up and in line with the hip. Both knees stay locked, and I want to actively pull that leg back. So I pull it back on my own as far as I can, and then I add a little bit of extra help with the strap until I get that mild discomfort, and we're gonna hold. P&F portion, I'm simply going to take that heel, pull it down toward the floor. Again, only a 20% effort. And relax. Actively try and pull as far back as you can again. Give yourself a little bit more assistance. And hold. Pull the heel down toward the floor again. Relax. Pull it back. Add some assistance. One last hold. And relax. Switch legs. Same thing. Make sure the other leg is straight and in line with that side of the body. Toe pointed up, both knees locked. Actively pull back. and add some help. And pull the heel down toward the floor. Relax, pull it back. Pull toward the floor again. Relax, pull up, add your help. And relax. Okay. We're going to stay with the strap here. Now we're going to go with a TFL stretch, so that little pocket of muscle that we talked about earlier. We're going to come across the body. We're not going to make that a PNF stretch. It's such a small muscle, I don't want to mess with it and irritate it. So we're just going to loop that strap around the shoe to make it more secure. And we can stay with the same leg that we just stretched for the hamstring. We're going to get into roughly the same position, and then I'm going to come across the body. Now, as I come across, I don't want my hip to turn, so my opposite foot, the one that's down, should not turn in that direction. It should stay, for the most part, straight up like it was for the hamstring stretch. So I'm just going to bring the other leg across, make sure that knee stays locked until I feel a stretch right in here. It's going to get some of the glute, and it should also hit in that front hip pocket as well. Same thing. Loop it around. And come across. And relax, very good. So that's all with the strap. So we've gotten the hip flexors, the quads. We've gotten the TFL. And now we want to finish out groin musculature, the adductors. Those tend to get really tight on people. Those will be next. So that's our frog stretch. For the frog stretch, keeping the knees at 90 degrees, we kick the toes out, and we go wide with the knees until we feel a little bit of a stretch at the top. Then I'm going to come down to my forearms, and from here, I keep my back flat, and I simply push my hips back toward the heels until I feel a mild discomfort from the stretch in the groin area. So from the side, just to give you an idea of that flat back, it's right here, and I push the hips back. For the PNF portion, we're simply going to pull the knees like we're trying to pull them together down into the floor. Again, it's a light pull. Don't pull a groin on this. Don't try and go as hard as you can. It is just a light push with the inside of the knee on the floor for 6 seconds, and then we relax and we see if we can push the hip back further. So let's go ahead, let's get started. Get set up wide, come down, and we start our initial stretch now. Okay, come forward just a hair, pull the knees in lightly. Relax, see if you can push back just a hair further. Okay, come forward a hair. Again, light pull toward the floor. Relax. Last time, see if we can sit it back just a little bit further again. And ease back forward out of that stretch. And we come up and we have one more for the lower body. We're trying to be well-rounded around the hip. So our final one is going to be our seated piriformis stretch. And we'll have a PNF portion of that as well. All you have to do for this one, just find a chair. I have a box, which is a little bit of an advantage because it puts me a little bit higher. The leg I'm going to cross over is at a downward slant. So for those of you like me who are a little bit tight in the backside of the hip, this is great because now the other knee's not way up here. I don't have to really crank away to cross the leg. So think about that. If you're pretty tight in the backside of the hip, you may want to use a surface that's slightly elevated where your thigh isn't parallel or even pointed up, but it's actually slanted down, and now it's going to be an easier time for you to get into this position. Once I'm here, I do want to sit up, big chest. All right, push the chest forward, low back, you should be pulling that in so that you're nice and tall. From here, you want to actively pull that knee down and then give an extra little bit of push just above the knee. And we hold here. The stretch you should feel is right in the backside of the hip. If you feel it in your low back, you need to sit up a little bit taller. Okay, for the PNF portion, you're going to take the inside of your knee and pull it into your hand. So again, light press into the hand, hold, relax, pull down, see if you can go a little bit further, and we hold that position now. Again, push into the knee or push into the palm. relax. One final time, down and press. And relax. Switch legs, same thing. And we are right into it. Pulling the knee down, add some pressure. Light push into the hand. Relax, pull down, and hold. Final time, push into the hand. Relax, pull down, try and find a new position, and hold. Good. So those are our lower body stretches. Helps you stretch the hip in all different directions. If you notice that any one of those was more challenging, I would suggest doing some of those stretches a little bit more often throughout the week to help even you up, maybe increase your mobility to a greater degree and more efficiently. Now we'll move on to the upper body stretches. Okay, so let's get into our upper body stretches. Half of these movements are actually going to focus on the upper spine. The upper spine is really that important when it comes to shoulder mobility and being able to move your arm up overhead in a pain-free manner. So let's jump right into it. We want a foam roll or basketball, volleyball, anything that you can curl your upper spine around, that's going to work. So we want to be able to extend the upper spine but keep the lower spine locked into a little bit of flexion, so I'm going to show you how to do that. First, on the foam roll or ball, you just find your shoulder blade. And we don't want to start really any lower than that. I'm going to take my hip, I'm going to roll it back and push my low back into the floor, but we need to make sure it stays there the whole time. Now I feel that my entire hip and part of my low back is firmly against the floor. I'm going to make sure I maintain that feel through the entire motion. I'm going to go hands behind the head, big exhale. And I am now extending my upper spine around the foam roll. And that's what we want. And I'll hold here, take another breath in, exhale, and I'll see if I can get a little bit further. And I'll do that 3 times. See if I can get further each time. And then I'll come back up. And I will shift up just an inch. From there, I do the same thing. Push that low back to the floor. Big exhale. And extend. Hold that position. Inhale, exhale. See if I can get a little bit further. And do it again. Now I come back up, I go to my shoulder blade, and then I go just a hair below it. And that's as low as I want to go for these extensions. So again, roll the tailbone back. So the entire tailbone and some of my low back is against the floor. Big exhale. Second breath, see if you can go further. Third breath, same thing. So with this one, I would do that maybe 3 or 4 times through on all of those spots. So if you want to take time, be sure you get a good amount of mobility in that upper spine. Go ahead, get a few more rounds in. Put the video on pause and get a few more rounds in. I'm going to go one more round on each one of those locations and then I'll move on. So back to shoulder blades, and here we go. Okay, so that's a good way to get extension. We also want to be able to rotate from the upper spine as well. So that's what we're going to do next. With the rotation, we're going to get into a sideline position. The bottom leg straightens out. The top leg comes across 90 degrees at the hip, 90 degrees at the knee, and I like to put a foam roll underneath it just as a guide to help me know that, okay, if I'm touching the foam roll, I know the top of my thigh is parallel with the ground. We can be below that, that's fine too, but for a lot of people starting off, that's a good position. I'll even hold it down with the low hand. Top hand, I'm going to go behind the head. What we're going to do on these rotations is we're going to try and get that shoulder blade that's on top to touch the floor on the other side. Look the direction you're turning. Big exhale as you go into tension. You always want to exhale, it's going to help you out tremendously. It's also going to help you relax so you can get more out of it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go 3 breaths. So I'm going to get as far as I can on the first breath. Stay put. Inhale, exhale. On exhale, I'm going to see if I can get a little bit further. And then same thing on the third. And then I'll come back around. And we'll do 3 reps on each side. Again, if this is something that you see as a weakness, probably want to do more than just 3 reps. So you can, again, put the video on pause and get a few more reps in on each side. So here we go. Good, so that's 3 reps. Again, if you want to do more, throw it on pause, get a few more. I'm going to go ahead, switch to the other side. And starting off rep 1. Good, and there's our 3 reps for that side. You may also notice that there's an imbalance. So I noticed that myself, going to my left, no problem. I was on the floor, rep 1. Going to my right, not so much. It was hard for me to get to the floor even after the 3rd breath. So you may notice that about yourself as well. And that just tells you, do a little bit more work on that side that's harder. Try and get that to where it's evened out. Now we're going into more of the traditional shoulder stretches. So the next one we're going to get some of the lat, teres major, some of the external rotators, and go into a big shoulder flexion. For that movement, I have my box here, but you can use a chair, edge of the couch, whatever you have that when kneeling is roughly about hip height, maybe a little bit taller. And we're also going to use your dowel again. We're going to hold it underhand at shoulder width, and then we bend the elbows to 90 degrees. Once we're in that position, we're going to go back to our kneeling position out in front of the chair, or whatever you chose. And we're going to get our elbows right on the edge. You want the elbows on the edge, and you want to be able to scoot the knees back some to where they're more or less right under the hips. Because all we're going to do from here is keep our back flat, and we're going to push the hips back and try and get our head to pass between the elbows, maybe even a little bit further for those who are more mobile. But we want to at least get our ears to the middle line of the upper arm. And we also want to drive the chest forward to get a little bit more of that upper spine extension. So we're just going to hold these for 20 seconds. We're going to come out of it a little bit on each one, and we'll do our PNF, where we're actually pulling the elbow into the chair, couch. And then we'll relax, sit the hips back, and see if we can get a little bit further. So let's go ahead, let's get right into it. Okay, come out of it just a little bit, pull the elbows, only 20% down into your chair or couch, and relax. See if you can push the hips back a hair further and hold. Again, come out of it some, pull the elbows down. Relax, push the hips back again, and hold. And ease out of it. Very good. Last stretch we're doing for the shoulder is going to be across the front, and it's going to be our pec minor. So if we were to take pec major off, there's a little muscle attached to the rib cage, comes up, attached to the shoulder, and it is notorious for getting tight on people. So we're going to use a door frame for this. Just going to put my box back. All we have to do for this, go up to a door frame, lift the elbow so that it's at a 45-degree angle up, And then we're just going to place it right against that door frame. Notice I'm in a stagger stance. So the leg on the side that I'm stretching, it's going to stay back. And I also want to squeeze the glute, tuck that tailbone under, so I'm not getting the compensation with my low back, and I know that I'm actually stretching that pec minor like I want to. So we're going to get into that position right here. Now, I already feel a stretch here, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to take those shoulder blades, I'm going to pull them together. So here I feel a stretch, but if I pull that shoulder blade back, I got a little bit of extra room there. So I was able to actually get more of a stretch, and then I'm just going to pull forward some so that I get rid of that gap. Now my shoulder blades are squeezed. Tuck tailbone, and that's as good a stretch as I'm going to get on the pec minor, and we're just going to hold here. Switch sides. 45 degrees. Come forward. Remember, pull the shoulder blades together and you'll realize, oh, there's a gap that'll create by pulling the shoulder blades together. So you think you have a good stretch at the beginning, and then you realize I can get so much more, and then I just step forward a hair to get rid of that gap. My shoulder blades are still pinned together. Tucking that tailbone, we have a good stretch. And relax. Very good. There'll be other stretches I show later on, but this is a good beginning section for the upper body. Okay, so this is the final section. This is for movement pattern retraining, and we are doing the overhead squat pattern as our focus today. Now, when we do movement pattern retraining, we need to understand that these are global movements, so they incorporate a lot of musculature, and there's a lot of timing that our brain has to get right, plus the mobility that may be there or may not be there. So when we see people who maybe don't have the best movement patterns, it's not necessarily always going to be, oh, they're restricted and they're wherever. It could be that they have really poor stability somewhere, and the brain's just trying to figure it out in terms of timing when part of that structure is not stable. So then joints above and below have to make up for it. So taking both mobility and stability into the equation, it's better to actually start on the floor for something as dynamic as the overhead squat. That takes gravity and stability out of the equation. And now we just work on some of the movement pattern itself, just trying to learn what those positions are, and maybe gain some mobility out of it as well. So the first move is definitely going to be a mobility drill where we're going to shift the hips around a little bit and see if we can stretch out more of the posterior side of the hip, along with making sure there is fluid motion side to side from a rotatory standpoint. And then we're going to move to a deeper squat position, still on the floor, and start working in some of the overhead progressions with which one hand at a time, and then we'll use our dowel and get both at the same time. And then from there we move to a quadruped position where we're on all fours. Again, now we're having to stabilize a little bit more. We are having to stabilize against gravity some there, but it's definitely not as much as we do when we're standing. So you can see the progression there where we go from the floor against the wall to kneeling to seated against the wall. And from there we go to our standing positions. So this is the very beginner progression for overhead squat. We'll get into more later. So starting off, let's get into the movements. We're going to get into a narrower squat stance against the wall. So our back is supported by the floor. I'm going to scoot down to where my hips have me, where if I were standing, the top of the thigh is either parallel or slightly below. Now we're going to take our foam roll or ball, whatever you've been using, and we're going to get that right between the knees. So it is a very narrow stance. From here, I lay back, I make sure I have a neutral spine, so I got to make sure I still have a little bit of a gap between my low back and the floor, and a little bit of gap here in my neck. From there, I'm going to push lightly in on the ball or foam roller, and I'm going to lift the hips. From this position, I'm then going to pull one of my knees down. So I'm basically taking that upper leg bone, that femur, and I'm sucking it right back into the socket, and I'm getting a little bit of twist in the hip as well. So I'm going to do that right now. I'm going to shift. So now, hopefully you can see, here's my right knee, here's my left. I have dropped my left toward the floor, but my shoulders need to both remain against the floor. So I'm getting all the movement from the hip. Once I have that position, I'm going to hold it, and I'm going to drop that hip slowly. And exhale as you do. Again, we want to exhale into tension. So I'm slowly dropping and seeing if I can get it to the floor, maintaining that swivel. And then I'll just hold that position on the floor for maybe 3 or 4 breaths. Make sure they're full breaths, so inhale through the nose, expanding out the rib cage laterally. Maybe 4 or 5 seconds in, 4 or 5 seconds out through the mouth. Not only focus on the breathing, but focus on maintaining that shift. And then we come up, and we're going to go to the other side. So now I'm going to shift my right knee lower, try and push my left knee higher. And lower, big exhale. Very good. So that's our first movement. You may notice it's tougher to maintain that shift or just to get the same amount of distance between the knees on one side versus the other. So if you have that situation, just do more reps on the side that's more difficult. So I would play around with this. I would do maybe 2 or 3 rounds on each side. Or if you are one of those people that knows the difference, do maybe 1 or 2 rounds on the side that's good, and then go to 2 or 3 rounds, maybe even as many as 4, on the side that's tougher. Now we're going to shift into the regular squat position on the wall. So I'm going to place my feet the way I normally do for a squat. So insides of the feet are about shoulder width. I turn my toes out, and then I'm going to scoot my hip toward the wall again, and I'll take my time getting there just to make sure I can keep my neutral spine. So there's my position there. I'm slightly below parallel at the thighs, and I am able to maintain that neutral spine position. That's really important. If you get this low, the pressure is in the front side of the heel like we want it. but your back is curled and really driven into the ground, you can't get to that position, so stay a little bit higher. So you want to go as low as you can toward the wall, as long as you can keep a little bit of arch right here in the low back, so there's some gap between the floor and your low back. Once I'm here, I'm then going to do reps with an overhead reach. And we can start, we always want to go thumb back, 45 degrees. That's fairly easy. And see if we can get to the floor. And then with each rep, we can progressively see if we can get a little bit more toward vertical. And we'll do one more rep and just take it nice and slow, big exhale. Good, and then we'll go other side. Lock the arm out. Now we're going to go both arms. So with this, we take the dowel, we get a fairly wide grip to where it's going to be more toward that 45-degree angle coming up, and we just do the same thing. Just both arms at the same time, big exhale. And we see if we can touch the floor with the arms locked. If we can't, we go as far as we can. And we hold there for a breath or two. And we'll do that for reps. Very good. And as you go overhead, you want to feel like your shoulder blades are getting pulled together, the top corners. Okay, so it's not the whole shoulder blade, but it's going to feel more like the top corners of the shoulder blades are coming together as we reach that final overhead position. So that is our overhead squat practice on the wall. And our final move is where we go quadruped. So we're on all fours. We get our knees set back into the same width that we like to have for our squat. We set our back in a neutral position, right here where we have a subtle arch in. And then from there we simply push the hip back as far as we can, as long as we can maintain the neutral spine. If you feel it completely buckle and curl under, then that's not what you want to do, because we're trying to retrain the body and tell it, hey, we can get into this deeper squat position while maintaining that neutral spine. That's really, really important, especially as we start moving toward free weights using the squat pattern. We've got to make sure we have a neutral spine position all the time. So we're pushing back as far as we can, as long as we can keep that back flat and neutral. And once we hit that end range, we're just going to hang out there. I would say 3 or 4 breaths, very long. 4 or 5 seconds in, 4 or 5 seconds out. come forward, relax. And sit back again. Very good. And again, you can go ahead and go for more reps on any of these and just keep practicing that movement pattern. So those are 3 really good starter movements when learning the overhead squat and trying to gain the mobility to get into that position when we're standing. With the quadruped rock, which is what we just did, that's also a great move if you have one of those big bands, not the ones with the handles, but just the big band loops. Ideally, one that's 1.5 to 2 inches thick. All you just do is anchor that against something that's not going to move, and then you'd be able to loop that band right up high in the hip and have it pulling straight out. And now we end up with a distraction where we're actually pulling the femur away from the socket, and that helps to open it up a little bit more, help you to sit back into that position better as well. So that's another option for that quadruped rock movement. So that's the end of our mobility session today. I will now post another higher intensity workout next, but remember, we do want these mobility sessions coupled maybe with some aerobic work on the days in between our higher intensity sessions. And that's going to keep you pretty well rounded, and it's also going to keep you a lot healthier and moving a lot more freely.